Mr. Chair, we are now live.
Great, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Ajax Committee of Adjustment meeting for February 24th, 2021. This meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is being held electronically and live streamed on the internet. Due to the COVID-19 emergency and requirements for physical distancing, no in-person attendance is permitted at this meeting. All regular practices and procedures of the committee continue to apply during this electronic meeting. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they are resolved. Thank you for your patience, and we'll now proceed with the meeting. Before moving on to the application portion of this meeting, I'd like to confirm whether there are any disclosures of interest from members of committee this evening.
No.
Seeing none, thank you. And if we could look for adoption of the minutes from the January 27th, 2021 meeting. I think I saw Lori's hand first. And do we have a seconder? Wasif, thank you. And all those in favor? Great, and the minutes from the January 27th meeting have been adopted. The committee is bound by the Planning Act to assess each application based upon its ability to meet 4 tests: that the application is minor in nature, is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the lands, and finally is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The process for tonight's meeting will be conducted in the following manner. The applicant and/or agent will be called upon and at their option may provide a brief description of the minor variance application they have applied for. Committee members may ask questions of the applicant, after which anyone with a direct interest in the application will be given the opportunity to speak either for or against the application. Once a motion is put forward by a committee member, there will be no further input from the applicant or anyone having an interest in the application. After a decision is made, notice will be sent out and there will be a 20-day appeal period. Anyone having interest in the application may appeal to the local planning appeals tribunal within 20 days of the decision of the committee. After 20 days, the decision will become final and binding. If a building permit or other approvals are required, they may be filed during the appeal period. However, no building permits will be issued until the appeal period is over and the decision becomes final and binding. A respectful decorum during this evening's proceedings is expected of all present at all times. And introducing the committee members with us this evening, we have Mark Pavlik, Cecil Ramnath, Wasif Ahmed, Lori Roberts, and I'm the chair of the committee, Greg Whitfield. And with us from town staff this evening, we have Sarah Moore, acting manager of legislative services and deputy clerk, Sean McCullough, supervisor, planning, policy and research, Caitlin Grout, secretary treasurer and senior planner with the town of Ajax. And just one administrative item before we get started this evening, question for the members of committee. If we are okay with holding down application A2/21 for 1461 Harwood Avenue North, and bumping application A4/21 for 60 Trolley Crescent up to item number 2 so that we can address the smaller applications first, and we'll handle the larger applications for the end of this evening's meeting.
Aligned. That makes sense.
Okay, great. So all members are in line with that. So we will hold application A2/21 for 1461 Harwood Avenue North down to item number 3, and 60 Trolley Crescent will be item number 2 this evening. The first application with this evening is application A1/21 for 15 Coleridge Street. The variance being requested this evening is to permit a minimum setback of 0.95 meters between the interior side yard building wall and the lot line, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum side yard setback of 1 meter between any wall of a building or structure containing a door and any lot line. Caitlin, was notice served and were any responses received this evening?
Notice was served. We did not receive any written correspondence for this application.
Great, thank you. And I know the applicant is with us this evening. For the applicant, town staff have written a report recommending approval of the application subject to 3 conditions outlined in the staff report. 1, that the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 15 Coleridge Street and as shown on the site plan submitted with this application and found as figure 2 herein, or this decision shall become null and void. 2, that the owner or applicant maintain the historical drainage on the property, or this decision shall become null and void. 3, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. For the applicant, do you have a copy of this report?
I'm just checking. I think
Yes, I think I did receive it by email today from Caitlin. I can just confirm that. I think I did receive, should I check right now?
I've outlined the main points in the staff report with respect to conditions. So if you have any questions or comments or concerns with any of the conditions, you can let us know. Why don't you start by introducing yourself and we can go from there.
Yes, my name is Nahid Aziz or Nahid Haq, and I live at 15 Court Street. And thank you very much for approving this. And I will abide by the 3 guidelines which you have given in the recommendation. So I thank you very much to the committee for making this possible.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to the application at this time?
No, I'm not really, unless you would like to know the reasons why I'm doing this.
That's up to you. If you'd like to give us a little bit more background, you're more than welcome to, but the background and proposal have been provided to us in the staff report.
Okay, then that's satisfactory to me.
Okay, great. For members of committee, are there any questions or comments for the applicant? Seeing none, is there anyone with us this evening to speak either for or against the application? I do have note of 1 registered third party. Oh, sorry, Caitlin, or sorry, Sarah.
Sorry, you're correct. Through the chair, we did have a registered third party, but unfortunately they are not on the line at this time.
Okay, thank you. If there is no one else to speak to this application, if we can look for a motion from members of committee. Wasif?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move that the committee approves application A121 for 15 Coleridge Street on the basis that it is minor in nature, meets the 4 tests, and subject to the 3 conditions in the staff report.
Great, thank you. And do we have a seconder on the motion? Mark, thank you. Okay, seconded by Mark, and all those in favor? Thank you. Application A1/21 for 15 Coleridge Street has been approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. It will help me generate income. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Have a good evening to everyone.
Great. Moving on to application A4/21 for 60 Trolley Crescent. The variance requested is to permit a minimum aggregate setback between dwellings of 1.1 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum aggregate setback between dwellings of 1.2 meters. Caitlin, was notice served, and were any responses received?
Notice was served. We did not receive any written correspondence.
Thank you. And is the applicant with us this evening?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. For the applicant, town staff have written a report recommending approval of the application subject to 3 conditions in the staff report. 1, that the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 60 Trolley Crescent, and then as shown on the site plan submitted with this application and found as figure 2 within the report, or the decision shall become null and void. 2, that the owner or applicant maintain an historical drainage on the property, or this decision shall become null and void. And 3, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Have you received a copy of the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Great. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions outlined by staff?
Just one regarding the maintaining historical drainage on the property. Does this need to be represented in an engineered plan for the site, or is it just something that visually has to be maintained when the inspection is complete?
Caitlin, if you don't mind, I'll defer to you for that question.
Sure, I can speak to that. That would be something that would be reviewed through the building permit process. The permits would be reviewed by engineering as well. It could be a matter of just reviewing the existing grading plan that was on file with the home when it was originally built. If there was anything required in terms of further, I guess, plans or drawings, that would be outlined through the permit process.
Okay, great. So I'll discuss it with site engineering and the building department.
Yes, exactly. That's correct.
Okay, great. That's my only question for today.
Okay. And sorry, if you don't mind providing your name, and if you do have anything else you'd like to add to the application. now's your
Oh, I
chance.
apologize. Sorry, my name is Kelvin Videra. I'm the designer on the project, acting on behalf of Wendell Greenidge. And I don't have anything additional. If you have any questions for myself, then I'm here to answer them.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from members of committee? Seeing none. Is there anyone here to speak either for or against the application this evening?
The chair, no parties have registered.
Thank you. In that case, if we look for a motion from members of the committee. I think I saw Wassa first.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that the committee approves application A421 for 60 Trolley Crescent on the basis that it is minor in nature, meets the 4 tests, and subject to the 3 conditions as outlined in the staff report.
Great, thank you, Wasif. And is there a seconder on the motion? Seconded by Lori, thank you. And all those in favor? Great, all in favor, application A4/21 for 60 Trolley Crescent has been approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period.
Great. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, have a good evening.
You as well. Take care.
Okay. Moving on to application A2/21 for the property at 1461 Harwood Avenue North. The variance requested this evening are to permit a minimum landscape buffer of 3 meters, where the zoning bylaw requires a minimum landscape buffer of 9 meters. To permit parking spaces provided to be located within 550 meters of the principal building, and to permit up to 65% of the required spaces to be located in the front yard and may be arranged in multiple rows, where the bylaw requires not more than 150 meters, parking to be located not more than 150 meters from the principal buildings, and a maximum of 20% of the required spaces to be located in the front or exterior side yards. To permit a minimum of 250 required parking spaces on the lot, where a minimum of 437 parking spaces are required. To permit a minimum of 1 loading space on the lot, where the bylaw requires a total of 5 loading spaces on the lot, and to permit a minimum setback of 4.5 meters from an interior side lot line, where the bylaw requires a minimum setback from an interior side lot line of 9.75 meters. Caitlin, was notice served, and were any responses received this evening?
Notice was served. We did receive 1 written response, which has been provided to the committee for their review.
Great, thank you. And is the applicant with us this evening?
Good evening, I'm Lorraine Sundstrom, and the CEO of Grandview Children's Center.
I'm Sean McCullough. I'm the supervisor. Oh, sorry, Greg.
Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
My name is Sean McCullough. I'm the supervisor planning policy for the town. I'll also be providing an overview of the variance application this evening.
Great, thank you. For the applicant, staff have written a report recommending approval of the application subject to 4 conditions. 1, that the owner or applicant obtain site plan approval for the proposed development that, among other matters, provide landscaping to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void. 2, that the owner or applicant, if necessary, enter into required tri-party agreements with the town and the adjacent landowners to accommodate the minimum required parking. 3, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits for the proposed development from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. And 4, that a setback of 4.5 meters to an interior side lot line shall apply only to an office or medical clinic with a maximum building height of 29.5 meters, or this decision shall become null and void. For the applicant, have you received a copy of the staff report?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions recommended by staff?
No.
Great, thank you. I understand, Sean, you're going to provide a brief overview first, and then we'll move on to.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So
Good evening, members of the committee. So tonight we're here for Grandview Children's Center. So this is a project, a piece of property that was donated to Grandview in 2015. We're just in the process of finalizing the transfer for locating their wonderful facility at this property. And so with that, I'll just first, if you don't mind, we'll let Lorraine give an overview of Grandview and what their mission is. And there's also a video that Grandview would like to show. It is approximately 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So if the committee is supportive, we would probably need an extension to the 5-minute time limit to go over the application, if that's okay.
Do members of the committee have any issue with that? No? Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, Lorraine, I'll give it to you.
Thank you so much, Sean. Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members, and staff. We're very delighted to be here this evening. We wanted to have an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about Grandview Children's Center. If you don't know our work, we're very excited to be at this stage of our project to bring really what is going to be an incredible facility to the town of Ajax. So Grandview has been in the community since 1953. And we are an organization that provides family-centered pediatric and rehabilitation services for children and youth with physical, communication, and developmental needs. We support a large number of families. Our physical geography is in the Durham region, and we have been very excited to be working on this project for about 13 years now to get to this point. A tremendous amount of advocacy by our community and by the families that use our services. We're very fortunate to have access to an incredible expert team of physicians and specialists at Grandview Kids, and we are quickly becoming a pediatric center of excellence in Durham region and soon to be located in Ajax. Our medical services team are overseen by Dr. Carolyn Hunt, supported by other developmental pediatricians, psychologists, community pediatric associates, dietitians, and surgeons who visit to support children to have their care close to home. We also provide center-based rehabilitation, including physiotherapy, occupational therapy, recreation therapy, speech-language pathology, as well as audiology, autism services, and social work. In the community, we are out in local schools providing rehabilitation services, and we also offer a preschool outreach program to licensed childcare facilities across Durham region. And finally, we are co-located with Campbell Children's School. We are very excited, as I said, after 13 years, to be at the point where we are bringing this project to fruition. We have been working with the community and with the families to advocate for a new facility because we have run out of space. We've not only run out of space, but we no longer have the kind of space to provide the services for children with disabilities that they require. With me tonight are many members of the team that have been helping us to get to this point. We're working with B+H Architects as the planning, design, and conformance team, and we have members with us this evening. We are also working with Collier's project leaders who are working as project managers, and Angela Stazeri is here this evening with us as well. I'm also pleased to welcome Andrea Richardson from Infrastructure Ontario, as we are working on a P3 project with our ministry, as well as Infrastructure Ontario, and of course, Grandview and all the authorities having jurisdiction. We've had a recent milestone where we have announced 3 of the teams who will be receiving the RFP. These teams were selected after an RFQ process where they were able to demonstrate that they had the experience in design and construction capability, qualified personnel, and the financial capability to undertake a project of this size and scope. And so we are very excited that the RFP will be released in the spring, and we hope to have the finalist team announced in early 2022, with the construction being completed in 2024. I could tell you much more about the project and could go on about it with excitement, but I would like to leave you with a final message tonight to demonstrate the work that will be happening at this incredible facility in Ajax. This is a story of Cheyenne. He is a client from our Ajax location. So we have, as you know, our headquarters in Oshawa and 6 satellites, a large satellite in Ajax, and this is Cheyenne's story. Thank you.
Basically, Cheyenne was born with no arms. But as he grew older, he developed more and more issues. So his leg length difference appeared when he was 8. After that, his kidney issues started, and soon after that, he developed birthes in his hip. That led to him on a wheelchair. He cannot walk for long. He has pain when he walks too much. He started to, figure out how he would do things with his feet. And when he started to grow older, he stopped using his feet to write. He started using his stump and cheek to hold on to the pencil, kind of like on the side. So when I went to Grandview, I felt that the therapists were thinking far ahead than me of how he would be able to do things all his life. So she was kind of looking far ahead than any of us. So that was an amazing feeling.
At first, when I used them, they were to test them out, and they did a lot of fittings and changed a little bit of the shapes and on the shoulders. I was very excited to use them and to see them and to actually be able to use prosthetics for the first time in my life.
They are opening up, new possibilities for Cheyenne to even try out. Like, he loves cars and he likes driving. He wants to drive now, like a proper car now at the age of 12. They said, let's focus on him using the prosthetic arms in driving, which would encourage him to actually, try those arms on even more.
First, I tested out on a gaming steering wheel, which was very realistic. If I didn't have my prosthetic arms, then I would need to modify the seats and the gears and the way to steer. And, I know that my future is going to build up with this, and I can do the things that I like with them and grow with them and adapt to a new way.
We are at the Deer Creek Golf Course, and we are practicing Cheyenne to drive the golf cart. I think I was blown away. That's the right word. I was blown away seeing him actually use those prosthetic arms, which I wasn't sure he would, but he used them so nicely. They worked wonderfully. They were everything beyond what I had imagined. I think it's very natural for every parent to worry about the future. From my experience with Cheyenne, things just settle in. Things start to fall in place. And of course, places like Grandview, it's less than a year that we started going to Grandview with Cheyenne. And I think it's helped him tremendously. I want to see every child who has a special needs go to a place like Grandview as soon as possible. That helps a lot.
Thank you. So thank you for showing the video. And certainly not all Grandview kids who come to Grandview require the specialized services that Cheyenne needed, but some do. And all of the Grandview kids who come to us deserve to have their services and supports in a facility such as we're building. We're so excited. The team from B+H and others that have been working on this project with us have been guided by 4 words that I would like to leave you with tonight. We've been thinking about the design of this incredible facility in the concept of belonging, in the concept of celebration of achievement, in the concept of discovery. We do a lot of research, as you can imagine. And finally, one of the words that resonates the most is hope. And so that has been our guiding focus as we've been working on this project. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about Grandview and the project. And thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Lorraine. And I'll just give a brief overview of some of the variance requests and there's some unique aspects to this project. So as Lorraine mentioned, it's going through the P3 program, which requires B+H and Grandview to work on parameters that have to be released. So at this time, the town has not actually received a site plan application, but they will, once the project team is selected, they will be required to submit a site plan application to the town. So we're coming to you tonight on the minor variance application, looking for relief on some areas that we've identified are going to be challenges on the site. There's been a lot of due diligence work that's taken place to date to get to this point and look at the various options and make sure that Grandview is prepared to move forward. So the ones I will touch on tonight, I'm going to just touch on the minimum parking space requirement as well as the distance one. In terms of the minimum parking, so there's been 2 parking studies that have been completed to date, which have identified that Grandview can operate within with 250 parking spaces. Both planning and transportation staff have reviewed those parking studies and are confident that it's representative of Grandview's needs. But of course, we'll be happy to answer any questions on those aspects tonight. The other one that is that you may be wondering about is the request to permit section 5.43 to be located within 550 meters of the property. So in this case, Grandview has, they're working with the property that's been donated to the town. There's also another piece of property directly south that's proposing to donate 1.5 acres that would be merged onto the Grandview site. The plan is that once that property comes online, that the parking would be built onto that property. In the event that it's delayed for whatever reason, we're just building into a kind of a backup plan in this case that would permit the town to enter into agreement with both Grandview and an adjacent landowner to provide shared parking on those properties until the parking was completed. In this situation, there's been 3 letters of support submitted with the application. 2 properties are to the north. They would comply with our current requirements, which permits shared parking to be located within 150 meters of the principal building. There's just a 3rd location, which is the Catholic High School immediately to the south. Their parking lot's about 500 to 550 meters from the principal building. So this would just permit that as an option to permit some parking on that at that location as well. The other thing I wanted to clarify, I think Greg mentioned that the requirement is 5 loading spaces. In this case, it's actually 2 to 3. And then finally, actually, one thing I forgot to mention with the required parking, with all of these variances, we've built in some flexibility. So in the case of the parking, when you're seeing a number of 437 spaces required, that's the maximum number. So we've looked at multiple calculations based on the floor area that's been provided by B+H. And because the final design of the building hasn't been determined, areas like storage space and some of the other components have been included into these aspects where once the building's built, they may not be part of the gross floor area, but just as to be cautious, we've included that higher number in the variance request just to ensure that it's captured and this project runs smooth once the application comes in. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Sean. Thank you for the clarification. Apologies for my mistake on the loading request. For members of committee, are there any questions or comments for the applicants? Mark?
Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, to the applicant, thank you for the overview. It was obviously a very touching video and a great overview. And I'm familiar with Bloorview Hospital, and I didn't realize that we had an institution that provides very similar services right here in our backyard in Durham until today. So thank you for that overview. Can you just walk us through so we're looking at the parking spaces, reference to the parking spaces. Can you just walk us through the anticipated staff complement that would be on site at any given time, and in addition to the client complement, and I guess, with the clients to be families there, et cetera. But if you just give us a sense for potentially how many staff would be on the property at any one time, plus how many clients would be on the property at any one time, so the capacity level.
Sean, do you have the Dillon report with that section loaded? I'm sorry, I don't have that with me. And I know that Harry Deeg is also on the call, and Harry, I don't know if you have that with you tonight.
Approximate numbers are fine too.
So
sorry,
I
Lorraine,
would-
I actually don't have that open right now. I read that this morning and I was going to save it onto my desktop, but I can.
That's okay. So I would say that I'll do this top of mind and I'll count on Harry Deeg. He's our Director of Finance and Admin. I know he's on the call, and Harry was very involved in looking at these numbers. So currently we have about 200 staff. However, we will be maintaining our one of our satellite locations in Oshawa, as well as Clarington. And in addition, we will be maintaining support at the Ability Center. We have a small satellite there. And some of our team as well, as we indicated, are out in the schools. So there's a portion of our staff who, in the design features, it's considered more of a hoteling or touchdown space. So we've done a factor of that staff. My recollection about how many staff we would expect on the location on any given day is about 75. So I'm just going to check with Harry that I have my number right.
Yeah, because quite a few, am I on mute?
No, we can hear you, Harry.
So because quite a few of our staff will be out on the road, that's about right. We'll have roughly 60 clinicians on the site at any given time. And then there'll be some office staff as well. So that number is correct.
And then you asked about the number of clients. And again, that varies, and it varies over time of day. So we have a mix of individual appointments. And of course, children come to those appointments with their families, as well as we have group activities during the day. In addition, we offer services in the evening, mostly parent training services, so large group settings. So the operating hours will be from about 7:30 in the morning till about 9:30 at night, with various pressure in and out during the day. The school that's co-located will also have arrival and departure time. The arrival time being just about 8:45 in the morning, and departure just around 3 o'clock. So some variation throughout the day and coming and going based on the clinical activity of the day. I think you're on mute.
He's on mute, yeah. So I get 75 or so staff. Could you just clarify the clients? I know it varies, but what would be the peak amount of clients you'd expect at any one time?
Right now, we have about 330 appointments a day. However, that includes our offsite appointments. So I would say that we're probably, we would have no more than likely at any 45-minute or hour interval, 45 to 50 clients for individual appointments.
Right, okay. So we're talking 75 staff, 45 clients. So assuming they all drove,
right,
120 cars maximum on the property. Sounds like, right? Did I do that math right?
Yeah,
or something along
Harry,
the way.
can I just check? I think one of the numbers we looked at when we started thinking about coming and going, and we looked at groups and we looked at time of day, we were looking at about 140 to 150. Is that right, Harry?
Yeah, because we also have Campbell's School as well. And then we also have potentially daily groups that will be, potentially there'll be seminars and other groups at any given time. And then potentially, other members of the community will also be using the space. So we've included some buffer there as well. So I think, you're adding another 50 or so potential vehicles at any given time there. But it really fluctuates depending on the time of the day.
So mean, certainly you wouldn't be anywhere near the 450 that zoning would require, and then ultimately you're seeking relief to 250. It doesn't sound like there's any risk that you would get up to or near the 250 mark in any case. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, I should say that 250 would be at the absolute peak at any point in time, and that would be the very absolute high end.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. That's it for me at this point.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Laurie?
Hi, thank you very much, Greg. Through the chair, I'm not sure whether this will be to the applicant or to staff, but I'm also going to ask about the park. I have two questions, and I apologize if this was already addressed. The location that's on Town Line in Clarington, I guess it's kind of like bordering Clarington, Oshawa. Is that location staying open once the Ajax location is open?
The board of Grandview is currently making that decision. The planning thus far, the assumption have been that we will sell that location. We own it. The location in Oshawa that will remain open is currently the recently renovated space at Paul Dwyer High School.
Okay.
So the intention is that space will, we will sell that location. In Clarington, we are currently in a small satellite at Knox School. And while we expect we probably will extend our lease a year or two more there if they're willing, we do have to think about a bigger satellite for Clarington, which is Bowmanville, Newcastle, Orono. We're starting to, there's a lot of growth in that area. And for those families, that's a bit of a distance to go to Ajax. So we're looking at an expanded satellite there, but not at the current. The town line is still, we're a stone's throw away from Clarington. We're still on the Oshawa side.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, because my concern is I've had the pleasure of going to that location and doing a couple of tours and a couple of things there. And definitely the parking at that particular unit was intense. Like it was really, really hard to find a spot the couple of times that I've gone. So I worry about our location for its proximity on where it is on Harwood, because there's that pretty serious bend that's around there. And if people are having to park at the high school, we're lazy by nature, most people. So I'm worried that people will turn around and park. I'm not sure how familiar, staff might understand it more, but on route where there's kind of like that dead end area, I just foresee people parking there and potentially walking over to the site. And that's a pretty brutal part of the road. So that's my only concern about the parking, knowing that there's future spots potentially coming, but that is my only concern is what if people start parking places where they shouldn't, and that bend in the road is just so not fun.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and hi Laurie, thank you for that. Certainly from the town's perspective, we wouldn't want to see individuals parking on that location. We've definitely examined that. And Grandview's done a lot of work in looking at, there will be a new signal at this location as well. Not to say it's going to be supporting parking, because we'll definitely have bylaw services if it did become a problem to examine that, but there will be a light for Grandview and their patrons arriving by transit, and then ensuring that vehicles can enter and exit the site safely on that bend as well, because that's been a concern.
Is it possible to potentially, and this may not be the time or place, but just maybe keep it in mind to have maybe some sort of barrier to limit the desire to park in that section where you could cut across the road to do it? That would just be my request, to kind of figure out a way to not make it quite so convenient to park in, not even on route, but on the other side, like a little further north, there's probably some areas in there that people would potentially park on the streets. So that's my only concern, is just people trying to run across that road.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's something we can certainly look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from members of the committee? I think I saw Wasif's hand.
I
Yeah.
do.
Just a very quick one through the chair to I guess to Sean and staff. Is there any plans from the town to actually expand that to a 2-lane just around there? I know it's not related to parking, but kind of related to Lori's concern as well. I have the same one. I know that dead end street well as well, and I'm just wondering if there's. I know you mentioned that there's a potential traffic light coming in, but is there anything in terms of making that perhaps 2 lanes each way?
Through the chair to member Ahmed, do you mean widening Harwood Avenue?
Yes.
Yes, so through the chair. So we are currently in the process of preparing to bring a consultant on board to complete the EA to widen Harwood Avenue from Woodcock to Taunton Road. So we are trying to align the widening of Harwood with this project and a number of other projects that are taking place along this stretch. And there has been a request by council to bring that forward, especially looking at crossings for some of the facilities to the north of the site as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Cecil?
Through the chair, I have a couple of questions, and I'll just ask them one at a time. Does the woodlot have the same conservation protections as parks and other natural spaces? And does TRCA have jurisdiction over anything here, as in the woodlot space? And it's a 2-part question there for staff.
Yep, through the chair. That's correct. So the woodlot is designated in the town's official plan as environmental protection, and it's zoned open space in our zoning bylaw. So it does have some protection that does permit conservation or passive recreation type uses. And at this time, it is not regulated by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, as there's no water courses or anything in the vicinity of the woodlot.
Got it. So my second question through the chair for the town is in terms of accessible parking or accessible on-site parking. Would all accessible parking spaces be on site, or would this be a fraction where the rest of the accessible parking will have to be provided by the other alternative site?
So through the chair, so all accessible parking would be on site, located as close to the site entrance as possible. And preliminary designs have identified potential locations for those and ensure that there's safe access to the front entrance.
Okay, and my final question is, there was a mention of the minor variance whereby an extension of 550 meters is requested. And I was wondering whether that 550 meter point was based on the north side or south side parking lot of the Notre Dame School, and whether there is sufficient accessible parking there in those locations, if and only if the need arises.
So through the chair, so correct, the parking lot, the north parking lot on the Notre Dame site, that's where the measurements were taken from the front entrance of the building. There likely would not be enough accessible spaces at that location. However, every effort would be made, and I don't foresee a situation where individuals requiring accessible parking would be the ones attempting to make that long distance. Those would need to be accommodated on site and ensure that it meets the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act requirements on site, and make sure that it's really providing. And I don't know if Lorraine wants to expand on that. If there would be any additional accessible spaces on site, just to ensure that your clients are being looked after.
Yeah, in the conversations with the members for the letters of support related to this discussion this evening. What we've talked about is if we were in a situation where we needed to use off-site parking, that would be staff that would be required to use that space, and clients would be close to the building. And at this time, we have one staff member who would require accessible parking. That can change and fluctuate. But for the majority of our staff members, they would be able to walk the distance or travel the distance to the facility from one of the parking locations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members of committee for the applicants? Seeing none. Now, I know we have a number of individuals registered for this application. Is anyone here to speak either for or against the application this evening?
Hi, my name is Ketan Purohit, and we are the owner of a plot which is adjacent and north of 1461, which is our plot number is municipal address is 1465 Harwood Avenue North. We received this minor variance application details from Sean. Thanks, Sean, for that. And we have given our we have sent our email about various points of concerns and some clarifications required along the way for related to this. I will like to first say that we are really thrilled and we are really happy to see that Grandview is coming as our neighbor. It's a very noble cause for the society, as well as it is our moral duty, as we understand. So we are very much happy to have them as our neighbor. I had suggested a couple of things to Sean. I don't know whether it is a correct forum, but I suggested that we are even open to merge parking lot and something like that, if that can help to plan and a better parking for both the properties. We are already in a pre-approval kind of draft design stage, and we will be also coming to town of Ajax with our proposal. So I don't know, Sean, I would really like to need your help on this, whether we talk about those points in this meeting or how does it go? This is the first time I'm attending a minor variance application meeting, so I need a help from you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Purohit. So he raised a number of good points that are all aspects that the town will review through site plan review, and they are concerns that we generally always examine when reviewing these types of applications. In terms of the merging the parking, I think that's something that a discussion that should happen outside of this forum. It's something that the town obviously tries to encourage where it works. I don't think it's that this is the forum for those discussions, but I think I can give your contact information, or sorry, the contact information of Lorraine and Harry, and try to set up something outside of this forum if possible.
Okay, so if they are considered during the site plan approval, then I'm happy with that for this minor variance to go through. Conditionally, if those points are identified and during the site plan, and if there is any point of concern, we can handle it at that time. And I guess that it will be shared with the vicinity properties, just like for this minor variance. When the site plan is being done, it will be also communicated to us to see that how the implications are coming to development.
Through the chair, so site plan applications, they're not normally circulated, but the town can certainly help facilitate some of those meetings. Some of the concerns that you mentioned, such as snow storage and looking at the garbage locations, locations for tactile plates, and ensuring that the proper stormwater infrastructure are all components that the town will definitely review. And I'm happy once the site plan application comes in to discuss that with you. And then in terms of merging the parking, so that's something that a conversation that would have to happen with Grandview, and I think it's something that we can help with.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Appreciate your help.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak either for or against the application this evening? Okay, see none. In that case, if we can look for a motion from the members of the committee. Cecil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I move to approve, I'd like that this be recorded, that this committee recognizes the immense role that faith communities and neighbors play in the spirit of cooperation to open their doors and to share their facilities to ensure that this important and very modern Grandview Children's Center is built and is sustained for future generations. And I speak in particular about the parking issue that is being accommodated here as well. Mr. Chair, I move to approve minor variance application A221 relating to the Grandview Children's Center, as it is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaws. I move to approve.
Great, thank you. And is there a seconder on the motion, please? Wassoff, thank you. And all those in favor? Great, all in favor. Application A2/21 for 1461 Harwood Avenue North is approved, subject to the 4 conditions in the staff report and the 20-day appeal period. Thank you for coming out this evening, everyone.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay. And moving on to our final application for this evening, application A3/21 for the property at 190 Station Street. The variances requested this evening are to permit a front lot line setback of 1 meter, where the bylaw requires a front lot line setback of 9 meters. To permit a minimum exterior side lot line setback of 1 meter, where the bylaw requires a minimum exterior side lot line setback of 3 meters. To permit a minimum landscape buffer of 1 meter, where the bylaw requires a landscape buffer of 6 meter, where the property is adjacent to type C arterial and collector roads. To permit a minimum landscape buffer of 1 meter, where the bylaw requires a buffer of 3 meters, where the property is adjacent to local roads in the prestige, employment, and commercial zones. To permit a minimum required parking space length of 5.7 meters, where the minimum required length in the bylaw is 6 meters. To permit 92% of the required parking spaces to be located in the exterior side yard for tenant or visitor use, arranged in a single row, where the bylaw requires that no parking shall be permitted in the front or exterior side yard except for a maximum of 20% of the required spaces, provided those spaces are used exclusively for visitor parking and are arranged in a single row. To permit a minimum required parking rate of 1 space per 74.6 square meters of gross floor area, where the bylaw requires a parking rate which ranges from 1 space per 28 square meters to 1 space per 500 square meters, dependent on the uses located within the units. To permit a minimum of 1 loading space, which will be partially encroaching into the drive aisle, where the bylaw requires a minimum of 2 loading spaces on the lot. And that is our final variance. Thought there was one more, sorry. For the applicant, is the applicant with us this evening?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Town staff have written a report recommending approval of the application, subject to 2 conditions within the staff report. One, that the owner or applicant obtain site plan approval for application SP 14/18 and enter into a site plan agreement to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void. And 2, that the owner or applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Have you received a copy of the staff report?
Yes, yes, we did.
Great. And do you have any questions or comments on the conditions recommended?
No, the report is very well written by Caitlin, and it's very detailed, and it captured the essence of the proposal, and we are in agreement with conditions.
Great, thank you. If you don't mind introducing yourselves, and if you have anything you would like to add for explanation for the application, now's your opportunity.
Sure. Mark Starsky, Dennis Starsky. Again, as Dennis mentioned, pretty much the report explains in great details what it is. The reason for all these different requirements for the setback, because this particular property is kind of surrounded by the public roads and streets from all the sides. So that's why it's not a standard site where you really have neighboring properties beside it, because nobody really beside this property. And because of its shape, that's why most of these requirements come.
The reduced buffers and setbacks are allowing to create more pedestrian connected site layout. So the main entrances are directly adjacent to the sidewalks around the site, allowing for pedestrian friendly design. That's first three of the variances. As to the other ones, the 92% of the required parking spaces being, instead of 35 spaces, being located in an exterior side yard. As Max mentioned, the site is surrounded by public roads, so there is no neighboring properties per se. Anyway, you're looking at the parking, it will be exposed. We are locating all the parking behind the building, so it is completely shielded from Station Street and Doughty Road, which are the main streets for that particular property. And the size of the parking space is 5.7 meters instead of 6. The modern cars are all smaller, so in a town of zoning bylaw, there are a number of areas which already recognize that 5.7 is sufficient, so that allows for more efficient use of land. The narrowing down of the requirement for one space per 74.6 square meters. Because it's a multi-unit building, we are not aiming at one occupant. There is going to be 17 units with a variety of different businesses. And to make it more easier for future tenants, we are asking for a fixed rate to be set for the site where, because it's a blended type of use, it recognizes that it doesn't have to be smaller or larger than that. And this particular rate is based on a parking study that was provided for that particular site. It looked at comparable similar properties in Ajax within the reasonable distance from that site, and it analyzed the actual required parking spaces to make sure we don't under-provide and don't over-provide the parking. That's the essence about it. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for the applicant from members of committee?
Sorry, Greg, it's Caitlin.
Sorry.
Can I just pop in quickly just regarding the notice for the application? I didn't want to interrupt you earlier. That's okay. So just for the record, notice was served and we didn't receive any written correspondence for this application.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. Thank you for the reminder. Apologies for that.
No problem.
Okay, Mark, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, can you, I know it's early stages, but can you give us a sense for the nature of the businesses that you're trying to attract as tenants? If you have any, what your thoughts are around that?
Through Mr. Chair, this building, as mentioned, is divided into smaller units. The average size of the unit is about 1,500 square feet. For the potential users, people that are showing interest so far, we have daycare, who until recently wanted to leave the space. I'm not sure what's happening now with everything going around, but hopefully they're still going to be on board for it. We have a couple of restaurants who are going to be serving immediate employment area because it's just convenient for people who work in the area. Smaller type of warehousing facilities. Again, when I say smaller, we're talking about 1,500 square feet for the whole unit. 1,500 square feet for the whole unit. We potentially may have some medical related uses. For example, we had what was the chiropractor or chiropractor and other medical related users who would like to take units. So that's the idea about the mix that we're going to be providing.
The zoning provision is prestige employment, so also businesses like service shops or a sign shop or a computer shop or office type of use, that's what we're aiming at. The design of the building is very versatile, where units are designed to be multifunctional, so they can accommodate anybody from a dentist to a networking company or a daycare. So that's kind of reflected in the design of the building to make it easy for change of tenure down the road if that be required, and also more convenient for somebody to be located who needs a smaller space, yet with all the convenience of access.
Thank you. That helps. Did I hear you, or perhaps I misheard? Did you say that some of the units would be small residential?
No residential. No.
Okay. I didn't think that was permitted. That's why I wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? Laurie?
Thank you very much, Greg. Through the chair to the applicant, if maybe you can just explain to me, and I realize this is probably me not understanding, but I'm a little bit confused because when I look at the report that was provided to us, the figure 2 that kind of shows the conceptual drawing of the units that are going to be there, the back looks like there's like a bunch of almost warehouse spaces. And then the one variance that you're asking for is to permit a minimum of 1 loading space. So I'm just a little bit confused how 1 loading space is adequate for the number of, so the next diagram, if you were to show that, like the one that shows the back part of 1, 2, 3, 4, like it looks like there's like 7 garage spaces or whatever it is there.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the way it's showing is we providing roll-up doors in not all of the units, but most of the units will have roll-up doors at the back. And again, because we're trying to make it versatile, and again, the tenure may change. One tenant can be there today, they don't need it, and then somebody else will be there from 5 years from now. The whole idea for somebody who needs space for the small warehousing, that's exactly what they need. Now, for the smaller size unit, as you can understand, no huge trucks coming to load or upload stuff. We're talking about deliveries being done by van, by Purolator, by UPS van. So for these purposes, they just park right in front of the roll-up door, and they occupy just regular parking space for the car, and they unload few boxes, they load few boxes. So that's the idea behind why most of the units will have roll-up doors at the back. Now, the way we're designing these doors, we're actually designing them to be, this drawing is actually being revised right now in the final version. All of the doors will be more of kind of see-through doors, not just regular garage doors, but more of the upscale ones, the ones that you see in the middle. So even for the tenant that not necessarily need them to be roll-up door, they pretty much working as a large window because they're letting the daylight through. And that's the idea. It's the same way most of the units, they have also second floor space, which allowing for some office spaces be located within this second floor space. For example, if it's a warehousing company, they can have the ground floor for the storage of the product and the second floor for the office needs. That's the idea behind it.
And just to add, the particular layout of the building, the rear view you're looking at right now is being revised as right now. We are in the final stages of site plan approval, hopefully with your approval for the minor variance. And all the roll-up doors at the back will look just like the one in the middle, where it's all aluminum frames with glazing. So you don't see roll-up door, you see a large glazed frontage, which also functions as a roll-up door should the tenant require that feature. And it's actually extremely multifunctional because the daycare that plans to move in, their outdoor playground connects to two of those doors, which function as a semi-open, semi-closed space. So in a bad weather, they have an opportunity to have it closed and use the inside double height as a enclosed playground area. But in a good weather, they roll up those doors and it becomes a continuous place with an outdoors playground. Just give some shade with the internal sides portion of the unit and outdoor playground with sun immediately adjacent to it. So that's the reason behind this roll-up feature, to make it more multifunctional for a variety of tenants.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that explanation of it. The second part, or my second question, is that one loading space, it's the variances, because part of it is because it's going to be encroaching into the driving part of the property, and that's at the narrowest part of it. So is there any concern about the people on the narrow side or the east side of that complex being blocked in if there's a large truck there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are referring to the loading space immediately adjacent to the garbage room in the center of the property. So the encroaching is into the drive aisle that passes by it, and then behind this drive aisle there's a row of parking. Even though it is narrower than some areas, but even with the encroachment, we're still providing the more than minimal required clearance for a drive aisle. So even though geometrically it does encroach, but we're still providing sufficient minimum clearance.
Other cars can still go around it. Like, it's not really stopping the traffic on a plaza. People can still go around it.
Okay.
The way we foresee it, it's mostly going to be used for the garbage truck. Like, we really don't see any large delivery trucks coming to this particular plaza. Like, we don't foresee any use that would require it. So it's there for the future use, but we just don't see it being really used all the time.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Cecil, thanks.
To you, Mr. Chair. This question is for the town. Some of the variances we are asked to approve represent significant changes in magnitude. And I'm wondering whether the town can shed some light as to why these major changes are expected to be minor variances. I'd like the town answer to that. Thank you.
Sure, through the chair. Through the review of this application, we did look at a number of factors. For minor variances, we take into account the numerical changes, but they don't form the entire basis of approving a variance. So for certain variances, the strict numerical number may look like a large or a major variation, but we do also take into account other factors such as the design of the site, the overall location of the building, urban design guidelines, the urban design of the site as well, and just looking at how the development will fit within the area. So in this case, because this site, as the applicants mentioned, is kind of irregular in the sense that it's surrounded on 3 sides by public roads, it is somewhat of a smaller site. It's fairly small in size in terms of looking at other prestige employment sites, with large warehousing or industrial type buildings. So taking into account all of those other factors, looking at the best layout from an urban design guideline, pulling the buildings to the south and west edges of the site to create a strong streetscape presence, looking at, even though we're reducing the landscaped buffers, the applicants are still providing plantings in those areas to create a lively streetscape. In addition, looking at the relationship with the buildings to the sidewalks, so pedestrian access, creating an enjoyable streetscape, I guess, for pedestrians. The fronts of the buildings will be located along those streets. So taking into account all of those factors and looking at, that ultimately the town would like to see the property developed. So we have worked with the applicant. The application has been in for a couple of years now. We've gone through some revisions, and ultimately, although numerically, when looking at some of the variances, they may appear quite large, the town is satisfied with those requested variances and believes that the approval of those variants would facilitate a good development for this site. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Cecil.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for the applicant or staff from members of the committee? Wasif?
Just a quick question. Maybe I'll go right back to you, Caitlin. I apologize. And I was listening very intently in terms of what you just said, but when we kind of talk about like parking requirements, and I get your concept of some of the nominal numbers may seem large, but on paper at least. But if we look at something like parking spaces, on the rates could range depending on what the tenancy is in the units, anywhere between 1 space per 28 square meters to 1 space per 500. I guess, I think this was potentially where Cecil was going, was, massive range between those two numbers of 28 to 500. And then when we look at the minor variance, we're looking for 75 or 74.6, I'm rounding up. But can you give us an idea of maybe some of the types of businesses that would require, something in that ratio, based on what the applicants are kind of talking about in terms of potential uses?
Sure. And with parking, it's always, especially in the prestige employment zone, we see a lot of ranges, and that's something, I guess, to point out before I delve deeper. The town's bylaw in terms of parking requirements is quite outdated, and I know through the zoning bylaw review, a number of parking rates are being looked at. And I know this committee has dealt with a number of parking rate variances over the years. In terms of, it's hard to, I guess, assign a rate based on the foreseeable tenants. So that's why the applicants are requesting, as they noted, a fixed rate to account for that. But I do have the bylaw up here, and I'm just gonna go. So looking at, let me see here, if we go to office uses, so office uses, looking at the different rates for office use, a minimum 1 space per 28 square meters of gross floor area. If we look at a lot of the uses fall within a clause that's called uses permitted by this bylaw that are not included specifically in the parking rate table. So the minimum parking rate for any uses that don't, so for example, personal service uses, they would fall within as well the 1 space per 28 square meters rate. If we're looking at other permitted uses, let me just scroll up here. Looking at medical clinic uses, that rate is 1 space per 20 square meters of gross floor area. So in terms of, it's hard to kind of to look at that rate individually, but through the parking study that the applicants submitted, their consultant did do 3 parking surveys at proxy sites, all located within Ajax, all zoned prestige employment as well, with similar types of uses that the applicants indicated, office type uses, medical, potential light warehouse type uses. And there was a range between those three sites. I don't have the study open, but I believe the rates ranged from as low as one space per 38 square meters. And the high end, I think, was it was around 100 square meters. So based on those three proxy sites, the third one was in the middle. They took the average of those three sites based on the square foot or the square meters of the GFA, and the 1 per 74 was an average of those three. In addition to that rate, they also looked at peak demand at those three sites as well, and determined that that rate was adequate to provide the peak demand parking at those three sites. So through the review of those other sites, the parking study did conclude that the proposed rate would be adequate. And I guess to further point out, looking at that rate, 1 per 74, the minimum number of parking spaces based on the calculation would be, I think it was 38, and then the applicant is providing a total of 83 spaces. So using that rate that was looked at for the peak demand parking, they're providing in excess of that rate when you look at it at the end of the day. So hopefully that helps clarify.
Yeah, no, it does. And thank you for taking the time to do that. I appreciate it. Very thorough response. One last follow-up question. In the event that there is a shortage of parking at let's say at a peak time over the course of the day or day of the week, whatever the case may be, where is the nearest overflow? So if I go and visit this particular establishment, and the parking lot is full, where would I normally potentially park? Because there's no parking on Dowdy and there's no parking on Station. I don't know about Old Station.
I would, if there's an overflow. The other thing I guess to note as well, and maybe Max and Dennis, you can speak to this, in terms of the tenants that would be located, that would lease the units ultimately, or lease to own if it's condominium tenure, the landlord or the owner of the property, you know, if let's say 15 of the units are filled up with X uses, and then someone comes in and says, I want to put in, you know, my business, which is a parking rate of 1 million parking spaces. I need, you know, the landlord or the owner of the property does have the ability to review that, and you know, ultimately they want someone to be leasing that unit, but they would be able to say, you know, in terms of the existing parking requirements of my other tenants, your proposed use would be, you know, I guess in conflict with what's with the clients that are already existing. So just as a side note, that, you know, that ability is there. In terms of overflow, yes, I would say on Old Station Street, there would be an opportunity for overflow there in the cul-de-sac area and along the street. Max and Dennis, did you want to add anything onto that?
So to take it further to your point, first of all, as a landlord, every landlord he is interested that all of his tenants will be successful. And one of the things landlord doing is trying to make sure they're all compatible, because if you're going to put two businesses in the same premises, which is definitely going to hurt each other, you as a landlord are going to lose money. So every landlord, being selfish, is supposed to make sure all of his tenants are extremely happy. And one of the things supposed to happen, one of the very first questions people ask, are we going to have enough parking for our business? So obviously, if landlord, let's say us, seeing that somebody is trying to open business, which is going to be very parking hungry, and we can see that it's going to eat up demand and it's going to create a shortage, we'd rather not to lease premises to this particular tenant and wait for somebody else to come, because the last thing we want to do is create trouble for ourselves. That's a very valid point. Now, from point of view of what we have in reality, we are asking to have a minimal parking requirements of 71 space and 74.6 meters, which will require only 38 parking spots. But in reality, we're providing almost 3 times more. We're providing 83. So we're providing actually way more parking that would ever be required for these units. Now, in addition to it, as Caitlin mentioned, there is some spots that people can use on a municipal road called Old Station Street. And there is a very large cul-de-sac that also can accommodate another, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 cars. And last thing to it, this particular property located right in between, it's located near to the GO station and it's located to the downtown core. So we anticipate that some of the customers will be taking public transportation together.
Or active transportation. There is a dedicated bicycle lane along the Station Street, and we're providing 20-something secure bicycle parkings on site, accessible throughout the site in different areas to make it convenient for people to use. Now, there could be a question whether people who are working there or who are visiting there would be inclined to use a bike. Our experience with some other tenants would say that people who are working there and living nearby, they would be the ones inclined to actually use a bicycle, because lately it becomes more of a cool thing to do. It's also healthy, right? Unless it's -20. So that's another reason. It's also part of the justification in the parking study report. And lastly, because it's a mix of the units, it's not a single tenant building. That's why there is also a different peak times for different users. A daycare would open up at 6 o'clock and then everybody flocks to drop off their kids, but the rest of the businesses are usually closed at that time. And then by the time the rest of the business is opening up, the daycare no longer needs any parking until everybody else closes and parents come to pick up their kids. So there is this different timing for peak performance for different businesses. And because there are 17 different units in the plaza, their peaks do not match. They don't happen at the same time. So there is also a benefit of that.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thank you guys for, again, just being very thorough in those answers. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Wasif.
All right, is there any further questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I don't believe we have anyone registered for this application, but if there's anyone else on that would like to speak either for or against the application.
Mr. Chair, there are no other parties on the line.
Great, thank you, Sarah. In that case, if we can look for a motion on the application, please. Mark?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to forward a motion to approve application A3/21, subject to the conditions outlined by staff, as the application is minor in nature and meets the other tests. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And do we have a seconder on that motion? Cecil? Great, and all those in favor? All in favor, thank you. Application A3/21 for 190 Station Street is approved, subject to the two conditions listed in the staff report, as well as the 20-day appeal period.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the committee.
Great, thank you. Have a good evening. And that concludes the application portion of this evening's meeting. If there's any other business that members of the committee or staff would like to discuss, you can go ahead with that now. Seeing none. Okay, in that case, we can look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Cecil? Great, and seconded? That's Mark. Thank you. And all those in favor? Great, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.